Sit comfortably, spine erect, chin away from your chest, eyes gently closed. Shift your eye gaze to the center of your eyebrows, the Jyotishmati, the light of awareness within us. Let's begin today's session with an opening chant. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We seek blessings to be nourished together. We seek blessings to make sure that we give our 100% in today's perception. We make sure that there is no hatred or competition between us, and let there be peace everywhere. To study the Yoga Sutra philosophy, let's offer our salutations to Maharshi Patanjali. Yogena chittasya padena vacha malam shariram cha vaidyakena Vyopakarotam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi. The Maharshi Patanjali gave us the yoga system to control our turbulent mind, to bring our mind into a tranquil state. Patanjali also composed the grammar for our speech, or the language Sanskrit, and is also credited for inventing the Ayurveda to give us good health. For that sage Patanjali, let's all offer our salutations and pranam. So what we're going to do today is, can you all hear me okay? Sunil Garu?
Yes, Ji.
Okay, excellent. So what we're going to do is, today's topic for Patanjali Yoga Sutra is about Ashtavangani. Vangani means limbs, the 8 limbs of the yoga. So far, what you've done is, just give me 1 second, let me. So the topic for today is, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So the 8 limbs of yoga. So far what we've covered in our Yoga Sutra philosophy is, we first started with understanding what is yoga. Yoga is a self-discipline, and yoga is all about controlling or restraining our turbulent mind and bringing into a tranquil state. And that's when we get reposed in ourself. That means the divinity that is within us. So every action that we do, it has an element of divinity. It's in the service of the others. And then what we've done is, we've also covered the 2 keys, which is one is Abhyasa and the Vairagya, the 2 keys on how we can actually get to that restraint, how we can actually restrain the turbulent mind. And then we've also studied the obstacles that we can get into our practice, the 9 obstacles that we get into the practice. And then we've also covered in the last few sessions some of the strategies that we could actually inculcate, or we could bring into our daily life that will actually overcome some of the obstacles. So today, what we're going to focus is perhaps the most important element of the Yoga Sutra. This is about the holistic yoga system that Patanjali unveiled upon us. This is the 8 limbs of yoga. And the interesting thing here is, Patanjali very deliberately called this as 8 limbs, Ashtavangani, not as 8 steps. And so what this means is, you don't really master one. Like, for example, when we are doing our yoga practice, we are covering 3 limbs. For example, we do asanas and pranayama and meditation. So we do those 3 together. So those are the limbs. It's not like we first, practice asanas and then we go into a session of, pranayama and then we do the meditation. So for example, the right analogy for us is, when you look at our body, we have a lot of different limbs. Like, for example, our legs and hands and face and different limbs of our body. It's not like the God didn't design the system as, okay, let me first grow the legs, or the first right leg and then the left leg and then the hands and so on and so forth. No. Everything needs to be nurtured together in a coordinated fashion so that we grew more holistically. Similarly, the yoga system, the Ashtanga yoga that Patanjali unveiled, is about 8 different limbs that we need to invest together like a coordinated fashion so that we actually grow our cosmic body. We all have a cosmic body, which is the divine body that we have, and that is who we truly are. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that we grow that synchronously in a coordinated fashion. And the interesting thing is, while we are investing in one limb, that also helps grow the other part. So the system is designed in a very, very holistic sense. Like, for example, when you do more postures, it actually helps you to do more pranayama, or it helps you to sit in meditation. Similarly, when you're doing the pranayama, it actually helps build more concentration. That is one of the limbs which we're going to talk about, called dharana. So, and again, this is the way the word of Ashtavangani, 8 limbs, is so that we all can truly unveil or realize our cosmic body or the divine body, which is who we are as a yogi, which is not the physical, the costume that we kind of temporarily identify with. So this is part of chapter 2, which is called the sadhana pada. Sadhana pada is the practice. So Patanjali defined, one is Ashtavangani, the Ashtanga yoga, and then he also revealed Kriya yoga, which is something that we're going to cover in the later session. So first and foremost is, why do we need to do this? And Patanjali, in one of the Yoga Sutras, what he realizes is, which we covered earlier, is that the klesha mula, the reason why we get into miseries in our day-to-day life, is because there are 5 reasons. One is avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. So these are the kleshas, the main kleshas are the roots of miseries for us. Avidya is having a wrong knowledge about who we are. Asmita is having self-centeredness. It's all about me and my family, my company, my associations, my community. It's all about creating a circle that is around me, and then everything that's out of the circle is somebody else. So when we define the separation between you and I, that becomes the root of conflict every action. So you're always trying to optimize me versus somebody else, and that is the root of all the miseries. And then raga, which is like desires or uncontrollable love or clinging for certain things. And dvesha is about some having hatred or unlikeness towards certain aspects. And then the last one is abhinivesha. Abhinivesha is insecurities. Mostly it's about death. So what Patanjali actually revealed is heyam dukkham anagatam. So the miseries that actually is rooted or is born out of these five kleshas can be completely eliminated. Heyam dukkham anagatam. I mean, isn't it so fascinating that somebody could make this very assertive statement that we can actually completely transcend this misery and be in that eternal state of joy. And that's the promise, and that's the commitment. Like what we started with the sutras, which is like alpaksharam asandigdam vishwatomukam saravat astobam anavadyam. That means, in very few words, we can actually get to, without any confusion, we can capture the entire essence and, from all different perspectives, and then without any repetition and without any, it's an irrefutable truth. And our true potential is that we all can transcend this misery and repose ourselves in that eternal joy. And we also talked a little bit about what is avidya. Avidya is not having the right discrimination, not having the right viveka about who we are, not able to distinguish between the real identity, as Sankhya defined, is we are nothing but nitya suchi sukha atma. That means we are nitya, means we are eternal. We are suchi, that means we are always clean, we are always pure. And sukha, that means we are always in joy. And then atma, that means we are indivisible, we are one. But the way when we identify ourselves with this body and the mind, of course, this body is temporal, which is like anitya, that means it is ephemeral. And we always get dirty, and then we would have to, our body and minds, we are not in a state of cleanliness, and then we become impure, and then we are not always in the joy, and then we have this sense of separation. So not having the right discrimination of, our true identity, not able to distinguish between, whether we are ephemeral or eternal, or whether we are impure or pure, whether we are in a permanent state of joy versus, this turbulent state of a roller coaster, the happy to sad, or whether we are one or, divisible. That is avidya. And with this Ashtanga yoga practice, we actually overcome this ignorance or the wrong knowledge. And again, all the other kleshas. Any questions so far? Or should we jump right into what is this Ashtanga yoga?
No.
Sunil,
No
any comments that you have?
No, Ji, I think we are excited to go next.
I see. Okay, let's actually do it.
Sorry, I have one question. Why is it's not Ashtanga? Anga means not
Limb.
Ashtvanga.
Anga is limb.
But what is Ashtvanga?
Ashtanga, I see. Let me see. Where is the Ashtanga?
No. When you pronounced, you said
Ashtavangani.
So it is basically Ashtavangani. It's like Ashta is 8 and Angani is 8 limbs. So
is it Vangani or Angani?
So the thing is,
Sandhi.
Angani, it's a Sandhi. It's basically, it's like, when you combine these things, that's why it becomes Ashtavangani.
Okay.
But your interpretation is correct, which is like, the Anga is limb, Ashta is 8 limbs.
Anga is not limbs. Anga is body parts, isn't it?
Yeah, but isn't a body part as a limb? No?
Yeah, it is. But like, we don't have, I think, English translation. Maybe it's a pet peeve of me in our mind. I don't know.
I see.
I think that literal translation is limbs. Like in English, I don't think it justifies as limbs. Limb is just a body part in itself, one body part, right?
Yep. I think, that's basically, we think we probably have to. I was actually planning to write, I was trying to draw a picture. I think it is in my mind, which is like, I was trying to draw the 8 limbs for our cosmic body. What are the limbs for a yogic body, right? The other thing is what I've learned or what I've heard is that from Sanskrit to English, there is not a one-to-one word correspondence.
True.
Right? In fact, some of the words from Sanskrit, you literally would have to have 3 or 4 words. When you combine all of them, it actually brings one meaning.
Yeah.
So what that means is we all need to learn Sanskrit and start speaking in Sanskrit. Actually, there is a small digression here. When I went to Gurukul from 5th to 10th in India, there was a time where we all wanted to, we used to learn Sanskrit from the 5th grade until the 10th. And every day we were supposed to speak in one language. Like, one day is Hindi, one day is English, one day, a couple of days Telugu, and then one day Sanskrit. The Sanskrit day was completely muted. The whole campus used to be in silence. So that was a small memory.
I'm a Sanskrit student too, but I don't remember a thing.
I see. So the only thing that I remember is aham modakam khadami. That means I want to eat laddu.
Okay. I only know Mama Nama Savita.
I see. That's just a good one. So let's actually jump right into. So what Patanjali in the Sadhana Pada, he makes this bold claim, a strong assertion that the root of all the kleshas, avidya and all the 5 kleshas, and the miseries can be transcended, and then we can be reposed in ourselves. That's the assertion that he makes. And then he immediately goes into, we looked at a few of the other techniques, and then he starts introduces this Ashtanga yoga. The first sutra that he basically says is Yoganga Anushthanat Ashuddhikshaye Jnana Deeptihi Aviveka Kyatehe. This is a beautiful yoga sutra. Yoganga Anushthanat, Anushthanat, that means somebody who is like, established, or somebody that is standing or firmly established in this 8 limbs yoga practice. Then Ashuddhikshaye means all the impurities within them will be completely eliminated. Kshaye. Jnana Deeptihi. The Jnana Deepti means that light of awareness that is there within us, that will be radiant from within us. So we will be, like when we start saying that Jyotishmati, try to connect to the light of awareness through one of your chakras. So people that are practicing this, they will be able to connect to that light of awareness, the Jyotishmati that is within us. Aviveka kyatehe. So the Viveka is the discrimination, to be able to discriminate between what is Nitya versus Anitya, what is Suchi versus Asuchi, and what is Sukha versus Dukkha, and what is Atma versus Anatma, what is indivisible versus divisible. So Aviveka kyatehe, Aviveka means it's the complete Viveka will be realized within. Kyatehe, that perception of the right knowledge will be attained by the person that is established or standing upon the eightfold or the eight-limbed yoga practice. So, and again, that is the beautiful thing. So the three powers that we're going to get, which is number one, Ashuddhikshaye, Jnanadiptihi, Aviveka Kyatehe. We will get the right perception of who we are, and then we will be radiating the light of awareness within us. And then not only from within us, we will also be able to connect with that divinity all around. And then all the impurities will be completely eliminated. So that is the benefits of the eight-limbed Ashtavangani practice. And then now, what are those eight limbs? Patanjali gets right to the point, which is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhayo, Ashtavangani. The eight limbs that are part of this yogic system, Ashtanga Yoga, or it starts with Yama. Yama means control. We use the word Yama in many different places. Yama, Niyama, Pranayama, and the ultimate secret is Samyama, which we are going to cover in one of the subsequent sessions. Yama is control. So the first one is the control that you have while we are interacting with others. The hygiene or the control or the discipline that you're going to impose upon yourself in how you conduct with others. That is your outwardly behaviors, the control and the discipline that you have in your outwardly behaviors. That is the most important, the yoga practice that we need to inculcate within ourselves. That's the Yama. Niyama is about the control that you're going to impose upon yourself, the principles that we need to follow in our own self-hygiene to make ourselves pure. And then asana, postures. Pranayama, it's again, Yama is control, prana, controlling the breath is the fourth limb. Pratyahara is, in fact, the simplest definition is fasting. Ahara means consumption. So we are in the world, we are always consuming through all our five senses, not just the food, but the thoughts and touch and all this. To be able to start reversing that, to be able to fast, pratyahara is an important limb. And then dharana is to be able to build a one-pointedness, the focus within your mind. Dhyana is to be able to put your mind in a tranquil state in whatever you're pursuing, to be able to be in that surface of a clear lake where you don't have any ripples in your thoughts. And then the last one is samadhi. Samadhi is absorption or the immersion. When you are pursuing something, to be able to go deep and immerse and absorb yourself so that you lose your own identity and you become the object that you're pursuing. So these are the eight limbs. The first five are known as Bahiranga Sadhana, or those practices or those limbs are outwardly focused. The Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, and Pratyahara, these are very much outwardly focused. And the last three, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, these are inward focused. In fact, they are a lot more powerful, Antaranga Sadhana. And in fact, Patanjali reveals a secret, which is called Samyama, which is the secret to excellence, secrets to mastery in anything that only is achieved through the last three, Antaranga Sadhana, which is Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhayo. But to be able to get there, we also need to prepare our costume, our body, to be able to go practice Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhayo. That is where, not only that, it's also to be able to establish good behaviors. So if you're not established in a good Yama, Niyama, how we conduct ourselves well with others, or how we keep ourselves then, we may not be able to actually, get the right one-pointed focus or to be able to in the meditative state. And that's one of the reasons what Patanjali defined as, in fact, we covered this at the beginning. The yoga is not a 30-minute practice which you do on the mat. The Ashtanga yoga, the real yogi, is a 24/7 job description. It's 8 limbs. They need to be continuously nurtured and grown together so that we are making progress to become the self that we are. Any questions or comments so far?
Yeah, could you explain the difference between the 6th and the 7th one? Both seem to be the same to me, please.
So we will cover in one of the subsequent sessions what is a meditation and then what is Samadhi. Meditation is, Patanjali's definition of meditation is Tatra Pratyaya Ekatanata Dhyanam. So when you look at your mind, when your mind is constantly producing different images, it's like it's a billion channel TV, which is like it's processing all the stimuli from your senses, and then it has its own impression. So it's constantly processing a lot of images, and it presents that image to the Purusha within. When you are in a state where the image within your mind, the pratyaya, becomes the same from one moment to the next moment, that is called the meditative state. So essentially, you can be fixated on any one thought, one simple thought. If the thoughts remains the same, or from this moment to the next moment to the next moment, that is called meditation. So what it means is your mind is not established in different thoughts. It's basically, you're are churning the same thought, which is like, the focus. That's called the meditative state. And then when you do that, eventually what happens is you don't exist. You lose your own identity and you become the object. You literally, you become immersed in that meditation. You go deeper and deeper and deeper, where you lose your own sense of identity. And then that's when you become union with the object that you're pursuing. Like as an example, the simple thing is, for example, whether it's Sachin Tendulkar or, take any one of the tennis thing, when they are playing the game, they sometimes, they lose their own sense, and they just become like, the ball or that they are hitting. Or the other simple example of Samadhi is, when you go watch a movie, what happens is you become completely engrossed. You basically don't exist. You become immersed in the movie. So the Samadhi is more like an immersion where you lose your own identity and you become part of the object. The only difference is when you're in a movie, that movie is controlling that. You're a passive element. The movie kind of takes over you. Whereas in the Samadhi, in the yoga system, you actually enter that state of Samadhi. You willingly enter the state of immersion. Is that clear?
Yeah, great. Thanks for the explanation.
Yeah. And then we will talk about meditation more. And meditation is not a static state, actually. It's not like, you freeze one frame. It's actually the same thought is continuously flowing. So it's almost like a laminar flow. So if there is a oil that is, pouring down a funnel, when you look from the side, it looks like a still image, but it's actually pouring. But there is no turbulence. There is no sprinkles. It's just like one smooth flow. So when our mind enters that state of where the same thought keeps on producing, then that's called meditation. And Samadhi is, you basically is like, you don't exist. You become immersed in whatever you're pursuing. Okay, so what we're going to do today is, I wanted to introduce this Ashtanga yoga and then focus on the first limb, which is the Yama, which is perhaps the most needed entity in the world today. So let's focus on the Yama limb, and then we'll continue Niyama and some of the other limbs in the follow-on sessions. So what is Yama? So Patanjali defined Yama as 5 principles, actually 5 vows that we can do. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, Yamaha. So which is like there are 5 vows that become part of the Yama. Yama is again, the thing is, our outwardly is a control on our outwardly behaviors, how we interact with people around us, how we interact with the nature around us. Right? The first one is very simple. Ahimsa is non-violence. Satya is being truthful. Asteya is non-stealing. Steya is stealing. Asteya is non-stealing. Brahmacharya is, actually the right definition of the brahmacharya is Brahme charati saha brahmacharya, which is like the Brahman is the grandiose thought. It comes from the Sanskrit word bruhat, which is like Brahman. Brahman is in the Advaita philosophy. It's actually somebody is called the Satchitananda, which is transcends this universe, which is that somebody this transcends the creation, and that we are nothing but that Brahman, the real identity. Sometimes we say is like Aham Brahmasmi. So Brahmacharya is, everything that you're doing, always be in that contemplation. So you are actually, everything that you're doing, every thought that you're producing, every action that you're producing is on the path towards the Brahman, is in that service of that Brahman, right? Is in that realization of the Brahman, right? That is Brahmacharya. And in fact, the opposite of Brahmacharya is, instead of engaging this higher thought, the Brahman-like thought, you're engaged in a trivial thought. That is the trivial thought. In fact, one of Shriram's gurus, Bodhananda Swami, says that Kshudra Buddhi, the trivial thought is Kshudra Buddhi, which is like, you're engaged in, low-minded stuff, or, of very inconsequential value. And then whereas Brahmacharya is, you basically expand yourself and engage in the higher thought. Everything that you're doing is always is in that divine state of mind. And then aparigraha. Parigraha is to be able to accumulate. You're always looking to accumulate more stuff, whether it is more cars, more buildings, more land, more whatever, or stocks and this and that. Aparigraha is non-accumulation. Because the nature is there for us to just take what we need. And in fact, I believe there is a very famous quote from Gandhi. It says like, this planet has everything to serve every man's need, but not a man's greed. So aparigraha is being non-greedy, non-accumulating. So these are the 5 principles. In fact, I equate this Yama as a right leg in our cosmic body. I mean, without Yama and Niyama, all the other practices are moot. In fact, when you do the postures, you're probably doing it for some health. And then you use that health to go engage in some Shudra Buddhi, or engage in pursuing some, trivial thoughts, trivial pursuits. But when you are established in Yama, the good outwardly behaviors, then the actions, the practices that you do are in the realization of the self, in the realization of the divine within us and then around us. So what Patanjali defined is these things. And what he also said is, when we start practicing these, what he realizes, we then become superhuman, or in the humans, we are with superpowers. So he also starts revealing some of the superpowers. And one of the other things that he also said is these Yama's principles, or iti jati desha kala samayana vichinna sarvabhauma mahavratam. So these are universal vows. These transcend jati. They don't be limited to a particular race, or desha, a particular region, or kala is a particular time. These are universal vows. They transcend a region or a race or a time. These are eternal universal vows. Samayana vichinna sarvabhauma mahavratam. So these are the eternal vows. It's like, simple thing, right? It's like non-violence was a sacred principle. It's something in the Buddha's time, or in the previous time. It's still the most relevant time right today, and probably it will be the same 5,000 years from now. The same thing, being truthful, and brahmacharya and asteya and stuff. That's what Patanjali's claim is. Any questions or comments? Iti jati desha kala samayana vichinna sarvabhauma mahavratam. And then let's actually look at some of the benefits. So I'm going to cover the niyamas. I think it's very difficult to see some of those things. Let's start working on one thing at a time. So what is Ahimsa? Ahimsa is non-violence, we know that. But the non-violence is not about just the physical violence. It's called Trikarana Shuddhi. Manasa Vacha Karmana. We need to establish a non-violence, Ahimsa, both in our, not both, in our thoughts, Manasa, Vacha in our words, and then Karmana in our actions. So that is a full, in harmony, in equilibrium across all the three dimensions, Manasa, Vacha, Karmana, Trikarana Shuddhi. And then what Patanjali also said is the violence cannot be, you do not necessarily have to be the perpetrator, directly perpetrator. In fact, there is one longest sutra, which is 2.34. It's a beautiful sutra. And I'll tell you some example when I was doing the class for some of the kids, and a kid asked me an interesting question. But what the sutra goes is something like this. Vitarka himsadaya krutakarita anumodita lobha krodha moha purvaka mrudu madhyadi matra dukkha jnananta phala iti pratipaksha bhavanam. What it means is vitarka himsadaya. Somebody, vitarka means, without the right discrimination. Tarka means, using the right knowledge. Vitarka, somebody who is distracted in a conflict, and then when he engages in this himsa practices, there could be any flavors. Kruta, that means they could be the direct perpetrator of the violence in the manasa vacha karmana, in any one of those dimensions. You can be the direct perpetrator. Karita, or you could be the reason for that violence. You may not be doing it, but you could be the reason for doing that violence. Or anumodita means you're actually enjoying it. You are a witness, you're accepting it, and you are being a silent spectator, not silent spectator, but you're also enjoying it. Anumodita. In any one of the roles, whether you are the direct perpetrator, or you are the reason for that, or you are the witness for that violence. Lobha krodha moha purvaka. It's driven out of any one of these kleshas. Lobha is defined by either greed or wanting something, or lust. Krodha, driven by either anger. Moha, which is again, the uncontrolled desires. Any one of those three reasons. Mrudu madhyadi matra. What it means is it could be of any intensity. Mrudu means it could be gentle, or madhya, it could be medium, or adimatra means it could be, there's a bigger act of violence. Mrudu madhyadi matra, dukkha jnananta phala means you will be entitled to unbounded, unlimited suffering in the end. Iti pratipaksha bhavanam. So Patanjali makes a very big claim. I think, you may see some temporary states of some gain and so on and so forth, but the ultimate result of any act of violence is only suffering, unbounded suffering for the person that is being part of the violence, or the people around us. And perhaps, we are probably seeing some of the effects of that in the society today. Would you guys agree? Kruta karita anumodita, lobha krodha moha. Isn't it comprehensive enough?
Yeah.
So, vitarka, it's a beautiful sutra. Vitarka himsadaya, krutakarita anumodita, lobha krodha moha purvaka, mrudu madhyadi matra, dukkha jnananta phala, iti pratipaksha bhavanam. But then once we are established in Ahimsa, he reveals a superpower. The superpower is Ahimsa pratisthayam tatsannidau vairatyagaha. Ahimsa pratisthayam. Pratisthayam means when you are established in this manasa vacha karmana, non-violence, tatsannidau vairatyagaha means you influence the environment around you, the people and the environment around you, to give up violence. So when you are established in non-violence as a yogi and nurturing and building your Yama, and then you become the catalyst, you become the influencer to create an environment that's free of violence. And we have seen this, right? We have seen this with Buddha. We've seen this with Gandhi. We've seen that with Mahavir. We've seen that with Martin Luther King or Abraham Lincoln or so many of these people. a single individual could influence the entire community to give up violence and make a positive impact, which is a much lasting impact. But when you do the violence and then you try to do the violence begets violence. I mean, it's kind of a universal truth. In fact, there is this beautiful story about Buddha, which is about, there is this a bad guy called Anguli Malika. The name Anguli Malika came in because, his secret sauce is, he would go out and chop people's fingers. And everybody is so petrified of him, so scared of him. And then one day he heard about Buddha. This is like somebody who's always in this equanimous state, somebody who's always peaceful and he's always smiling. So he says, like, how could there be a man who is not afraid of me? And so he goes to Buddha. And he says, like, Buddha is like, this calm, looking at him and in a peaceful smile. And there is no real chatter. There's no wavering in his posture. And then Anglo Malika tells him, it's like, do you know who I am? I chop people's fingers. Everybody's scared of me. And Buddha is like, just smiles at him and just makes an eye contact and this Anglo Malika becomes so scared. And then he hasn't met anybody who is like in that state of equilibrium and state of that equanimous mind and who is joyful. And he suddenly is like, he cries and then, he prostrates at Buddha's feet. He becomes one of Buddha's greatest disciple. So I think this one, we can actually, something that we can practice 24/7 and establish in Trikarna of Ahimsa. And then we can be the catalyst for the positive change to the society that's needed. And I mean, there are many stories like this. Ahimsa pratisthayam tatsannida vairatyagaha. And actually, there is a beautiful thing. One time I was teaching this Yoga Sutra philosophy. Can somebody please, Sunil ji, can you? Yeah. There's this beautiful, when I was talking about this Yoga Sutra philosophy, some kids. There's a kid that basically asked me, which is like, I don't do any violence activities, but then I play some video games. And is that okay? And I thought that was a brilliant question. This was actually a second grade or third grade kid. Can Priyaji, can you please mute yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Srini. I was going to say something, but
no. If there is a question, please go ahead.
There's no question. I agree, especially with that point that when you inflict violence, you're actually hurting yourself. I think what I wanted to state here is it's not just physical violence. I think in the civilized world, a lot of us have acknowledged, at least for the sake of coexisting, that we will not inflict physical violence upon others, however tempting it may be. But I think more often than not, there's a lot of emotional violence that people inflict on others. So, and sometimes there is also this petty thought creeps up when somebody's hurt you that you want to see them pay for it. I think it's very easy. One is when you do it yourself. The second is when you suffer in the hands of someone and you feel tempted. I think it's only human to see that there is some consequence to people's action. But I think that is something we have to work towards also. Somehow, avoid that tendency. It's very difficult to get there, but I think it is something that we should work towards, because you shouldn't let, sometimes you pay for this kind of niceness, but what you should learn is to distance yourself, but not respond in kind, because as you start reacting to what is being done to you, you without even realizing, you eventually lose the sense of who you actually are. And I think that is something we should all be conscious of and try to practice.
I mean, it's so beautifully said, Priyaji. In fact, not the previous session, but last Saturday, we covered this. Patanjali also revealed 4 techniques on how to deal with people, which is like, even if somebody is engaging in a violence thought. And in fact, what you said is not just a physical thing. Manasa vacha karmana. The violence could be in the thoughts, it could be in the words, or it could be in the physical karmana, actions, right? I mean, those actions could be, could be anything. Right? So that's what Patanjali revealed. Maitri karuna mudito upekshaha sukha dukkha punya punyanam. So which is like, people that are either sad, people that are doing bad things could be hurting you. But what you said is you don't respond in kind. And try to see upeksha, be indifferent to those actions, and then see if whether, recognize that they are drifted away from their true self, the divinity, and then shift your awareness to see the positive side of them. Or when you become non-violent, when you become ahimsa pratisthaya, you will eventually influence them to give up their violence. It just perhaps takes a little bit longer time, but the longer time lasts much longer. The gain is much more permanent than something else. The other thing is, in fact, go ahead.
We try that, Srini. I've always been a believer in that, and I think despite that, sometimes it doesn't seem to have any effect on the other person. So sometimes it works very well. I think if you're very patient, people eventually understand, and then sometimes it's also a question of them having been hurt in the past, or they have a trust problem, or they've just not looked at life this way. So maybe with all this forgiveness that you show towards them, it does change people, their perspective, but it doesn't happen with everybody also. So I think at some point you also have to know that keeping at it can hurt you, but you still need to walk away. The more important thing to me is that you don't retaliate, or you don't feel, I don't know. It's very tempting.
No, but that's exactly, but that's Priyaji, that's why the word that Patanjali uses is upeksha. Upeksha means be indifferent. Right? Be indifferent. The only thing is don't pour your awareness of the negative things that because the more real estate that you give to the negative thing, you're only hurting yourself. And that's the upeksha definition. One is to be, like you said, whether to walk away or be indifferent. And then the upeksha phase 2 is then shift your awareness to see, can you actually nurture and grow? Can you help them, compassion and love? Can you actually get them to the divine state? When some people cannot get there, and they need, like, for example, Hiranyakashipu, all those things, because they were in a rush to unite with the divine. They were given a choice whether to take, sahasra, thousands and thousands of, lifetimes to pay price for their mistake to unite with the divine, or they were given a choice to become like, only 3 lifetimes, but they will be the bad guys doing all kinds of, bad stuff, like extreme evil. And they chose the thing. So sometimes, when you see a person who is like, beyond repair, so then in that case, perhaps, we just need to be indifferent. Maybe they are in a rush to reunite with the divine, and then just leave them. Is it a good metaphor? Actually, is that a good metaphor, Hiranyakashipu? Savita Garu, is that a good metaphor?
Yes. Yeah, in a sense, sometimes people take on being the bad person, as you said, to burn off their karmas.
Exactly.
But it's very, I also understand where Priya is coming from, where you as a person, to understand, you have to be in that realm of understanding that this is what's happening. Because when you're actually, it's hard to see the bigger picture when you're in the scenario. It's always easy to watch a movie and say, hey, don't go here, this is a danger, look at where he's going. But when you're in the movie, you're always lost, and you're always you don't know what's happening in the future. It's like you're in your life, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If we knew how we would end and what are the things, good opportunities, bad opportunities come, we all could make changes, right? But Hiranyakashipu is a good one, but I think more than that, Prahalada knew that. But we are not Prahalada, right?
Yeah, I mean, we are going to, no, we are not Prahalada. No, it's not just that. We just need to increase our yoga practice. That's all there. We just need to be abhyasa.
Yeah. But you can't get there one day. It's like, probably it's a lifetime for even us.
Yeah.
One thing, Srinidhi.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Krishna, obviously encouraged violence with, to establish dharma, right? So I think, obviously, he did for a reason. And when the person is like Duryodhana, there is nothing he can do. Right? I think we have to walk a fine line there. The indifference, I think, certainly is the big thing there. But if we just are only non-violent, and if the other person is like Duryodhana, then what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. In fact, we covered this briefly, which is like, it's like, in some cases, we just have to act the role, but you're not going after a person. You're only going after the context, a deed. So that's what it says, like, karmanyeva adhikaraste, act with a sense of vairagya. So, which is like, you are established in equanimity. It is like, even when you're fighting the Kurukshetra battle, you're not going there to try to take a revenge. What it basically says is like, you establish in a state of equanimity and then go do your job. And you're not even killing Duryodhana, actually, at that time. You're only killing a deed that is doing the wrong sin, but your enmity is not associated with the person. That is the state of vairagya. And that is basically is like yogastha kuru karmani, which is like you just establish an equality and then just go do the job.
But I don't think Krishna encouraged violence because he knew it was just a body and it was a transcendental. That's what he mentioned. Yeah, exactly. I don't think he meant encouraged violence.
Yeah, exactly. I think he just basically said, just do your duty. This is basically like, you're not doing anything revenge, or this is not about a person. Whereas Duryodhana was not a yogi. He was taking a personal vendetta. Everybody's like, because he was limited by lobha, krodha, moha, purvaka. So it's like he was driven by the greed or this or that. What Krishna encouraged is, no. You establish in yoga, you just go prosecute it. Don't think that they are your relatives or this or that. Just, establish a sense of vairagya and then just go do your job. And then, become a yogi. I think, that's exactly right. It's not a violence. You just basically go do your job without personifying or without being attached to the situation. So let me wrap up, this one other, small thing. I know the kid asked, he was so influenced by this entire non-violence thing. And he basically asked me, it's like, I don't do any violent, I'm always loving, but I enjoy some video games and it has some fights and this stuff. And he says like, is the video games okay? And I was like very amused with that question actually. And then what I said is, okay, I'm not a guru. I don't make up these rules. What this sutra basically said is, kruta karita anumodita. Anumodita is if you are enjoying an act of violence as a witness, then also you get into the dukkha jnana ananta phala. In whatever the form, ridu madhyadi matra, then also you get into it. So that means even the video games with a violence, they're also the source of unlimited misery. And in fact, that's becoming true. The more we introduce kids to all these kinds of shooting and the toys and this stuff, then they become part of an acceptable norms. We become desensitized. And we become, and then with the unlimited, unbounded supply of these kinds of weapons. And even those movies, some people say it's like, that's just an entertainment. In the movies, this is fine. I mean, I hate Telugu movies or this stuff, where there's all these kinds of, uncivil fights. And they think that is just a form of entertainment. So what we've done is we've socially changed the consciousness of the consciousness of the fabric of the society. And, people don't even respond if there are some accidents or something, some bad acts happen. People are desensitized. So what we need to do is...
For a child, yes, it's the right answer. But for somebody and as an adult, I would say, if you have a discrimination of, okay, I am only watching this for the entertainment purpose and not I'm not like, I know when to block it, how far. And having a discrimination in your mind, can you not enjoy, still be part of it, like, enjoy it or whatever it is?
Or at least, from what I know, in fact, what I've noticed is, I mean, I actually, I wrote some blogs on this, like, movies like Arjun Reddy or something like that, right? Even if for entertainment, whether we like it or not, I think subconsciously, it actually leaves a latent impression. Latent impression. I mean, in fact, some people actually justify this movies like Arjun Reddy. It's like, no. It's responding that from the intensity of that's an expression of this stuff, which is like, no. There's a satsangatve, nissangatvam. If you are this stuff, there are better ways to express your stuff. and get to the right outcome. Or at least my understanding, I could be wrong in my interpretation, what particularly when it deals with mind, the mind is a very, very, I mean, it's a complex faculty. Even if we are actually, if we think we have the discrimination intellect or the discriminative intellect, and if you're trying to only use it for this or that, I think it leaves a sense of impressions and perhaps later lead into some kind of anxieties and this stuff we cannot even pinpoint. Whereas, if you engage in, more positive thoughts, more uplifting in the seva and the love, and in fact, Patanjali reveals a secret, which is like Tura 33, which is what he says is like, but sometimes we get these thoughts of, want to go enjoy a violent act. I know I have this discriminative knowledge, or, sometimes I get this thought, but then how do I overcome it? And in fact, it applies to all the yamas and niyamas. The way the mind works is when you have a thought, like for example, if you have a thought of a violence, even though you don't want to do, but the thought occurred. If you try to suppress, if you tell the mind like, please take out this violent thought from me, the mind, the way it acts is when you say it's like, please take this away, that only gets magnified. It grows into the big elephant in the room. So what Patanjali reversed is vitarka badane pratipaksha bhavanam. What it means is when you are arrested when you lose your tarka, and then when you get immersed, or when you get that rooted in a thought like this, an act of violence or any one of the anti-yama principles, what it basically is like, instead of trying to rid that off from your mind, which says like pratipaksha bhavanam, invite the opposite thought into your brain. So you basically crowd this thought, the negative emotion, with more opposite of positive thought. That's the way to suppress the negative emotions. Like as an example, you feel like, hey, maybe for the Saturday evening, let me watch like my kids, right? Now they're big fans of Criminal Minds. Wow, what a serial. So when you get a thought like this, the way is like, instead of trying to put Criminal Minds away, what it basically says is invite an opposite thought that is of a more positive, the Yama conformant, thought into your mind, so that grows bigger, and then it suppresses this other thought. So mind is like, you don't actually try to muck with the mind and try to like, do this, you cannot control it. You just need to allow an environment so that what you want is going to happen. That's what even meditation is. Meditation is not something that or like a sleep, you don't work for it. You just need to allow it to happen. So meditation, you allow it to happen. And similarly, this mind ridding of these yama thoughts, you allow it to by bringing in, inviting more positive thoughts. Like for example, if you have a sense of violence, what is the opposite? That is love. Perhaps engage in an act of love, or engage in a thought of a love or compassion, or watch, try to go engage in a satsang. Then this negative thoughts are going to go away. So that's, I know we've taken more time on this. There are other powers of all the other 5 things. Perhaps we can continue that in the next session. I just wanted to introduce the Yama. Yama is a very, very profound limb. In fact, in the society today, for all the yogis, more than the postures, more than the pranayama, more than anything, I think we need to start the core abhyasa of Yama principles and the Niyama principles. Those are the 2 feet for our cosmic body or the yogic body. On that, we can actually practice asana, pranayama, and all the other limbs. So in fact, my goal is the universe needs to have 3 things: Yama, Niyama, Samyama. I think if we can master these 3 skills, I think there is nothing that we cannot achieve in this world. And I think, Samyama is the ultimate skill that we need to master, but I don't think you can get to Samyama until you master Yama and Niyama, having a good conduct towards others and then having a good conduct towards yourself. And then we're going to cover the rest of the 4 and some of the powers that Patanjali revealed. But I think we all have the power to be the Buddhas. Ahimsa pratisthayam tatsannidha vairatyaga. So it's just like we can create an environment where the people around us can give up violence. One of the small example, sometimes I quote this as an example. So 2011, when I was in Paris, I had this habit in those days where, if I went to any nice city, like, for example, when I went to Budapest and I used to practice on the chain bridge, or in the Paris, my dream was to actually practice yoga next to Eiffel Tower. So one fine day morning, I went and set up a camera, and then I was practicing my yoga. And then after that, in the end, I was lying down in Shavasana, enjoying the fine thing, and I was so happy. And then suddenly there was some kind of a commotion. And then there was like, some noise. And then I opened my eyes, and there was like, 9 cops pointed their guns towards me on this lawns. So it was an interesting sight, actually. So then I just looked up, and then I was smiling, and then basically said like, hey, namaste, I'm just doing yoga. So then they basically said namaste, and then they just left. But so one advice is, please don't do yoga next to any one of the interesting monuments. But sometimes I use that as a kind of a funny way of validation, right? If I were to have responded with like, hey, dude, what are you doing? It's like, if I was like, then that would have created, some kind of a negative consequence. The fact that, just, at least smiled and then, just surrendered without any emotion, I think that probably created Vairatyaga.
Shring, that's a very nice example. I just wanted to confirm one thing. You mentioned about Ahimsa. There are, I think, many methods you mentioned. One of us, it was Upeksha. Can you please mention the other ones also?
Yeah. It's actually, there's a recording from that session. I'll send it to you. But what it basically says is, very quickly, people who are happy, Maitri, be friends with them. Be friends with them. And the dukkha, people who are in the suffering, karuna, don't friend them. Just like don't don't just go hug them. Just like, I mean, a lot of people do that, just kind of validating the suffering. Oh, yeah, it happened. It's like, what you're doing is you're only multiplying the suffering, which is be compassionate, help them to get over that state of suffering, and then get them to a happy state. The Maitri, then Mudito, Punya, people who are doing the good deeds, and Mudito, be inspired, enjoy their success, celebrate other people's success. Oftentimes, we often act the other way. If somebody is successful, we try to poke holes, and we become jealous of them. And the last one is people who are doing apunya, be indifferent or try to nurture the divinity. And again, there's a lot more details on how to be compassionate and with right metaphors, which we covered in one of the sessions. If you're interested, I can send you the link.
Yes, thank you so much, please.
So let's conclude the sessions. Are there any other comments on this topic? I know we've come up on the time.
What is the gist of all this?
Which is gist of all this is very simple, which is like start investing in a more holistic yoga practice, not just the postures and this stuff. The first limb that we need to nurture is Yama. And then the first abhyasa that we need to start doing is make sure that we do the non-violence, being truthful, being non-stealing, and brahmacharya, as much as possible. And again, we are not going to get there 100%, right? But this is the muscle, the Yama muscle, that we need to include in our practice so that we have the opportunity. We're progressing towards becoming the full yogi. And then when we are practicing yoga, when we are communicating to somebody that we are doing the yoga, we try to communicate the essence of the holistic yoga. Unfortunately, in today's world, yoga is kind of become synonymous with the physical practice, the bends and this and that. But that's not what the real essence of yoga. So we become the ambassadors of the holistic yoga system.
Thank you for that summary, Srini. I think it's a bit like how Hinduism has only become about rituals to most people. So
actually,
yes,
that's
yoga.
Yeah. In fact, if you interpret the Sanatana Dharma, the Sanatana Dharma is so profound. In fact, the God is also defined as Nirguna Nirvikara. In fact, in the Upanishads, the God is defined as Neti, Neti, Neti. I mean, what one sentence of Neti, Neti, Neti is so profound. Something that it is not. You cannot describe the Brahman or Atman with your limited mind and words or this stuff, something that transcends your comprehension, right? So then the technique is you have to use the mind to transcend the mind to unite with the Brahman. So the entire Sanatana Dharma is so metaphysical and the way they explored the universe and the cosmos, both inside and outwards, to achieve the truth is so profound. But unfortunately, when the Bhakti movement came in, and we got kind of retired to rituals and tantric and this and this and this stuff. But I think the truth is going to prevail, which is already happening.
But
So with
Srini,
that,
I think I don't want to drag on, but I just want to add one point here. I think part of the problem is that see, it's also I mean, I come from a family, of course, we do rituals and all of that, but we're not very ritualistic. We do temple festivals and all that, definitely, but we're not like super orthodox or anything. We do pray regularly, we celebrate all festivals. A lean version because my mom is also working. But I think the whole point is that parents also over the years have only been training their kids in the rituals themselves without stopping to talk about why we do certain things a certain way, and maybe a little more on the other level on how it's about being a good person even if you don't follow the rituals. But we are so caught up in in all this putting money. I'm not suggesting you should not put money in the hundi. Of course the temple needs to run, and the whole idea is that we keep the what do you call that, the infrastructure up and running. But I think a lot of it is the fault of the previous generation, and because they have not understood themselves, they have not failed to impart, and that is what is getting carried over. I think we all have a responsibility to understand and also propagate good thoughts. You don't even have to go to a temple, you don't even have to pray. I don't intend to bring religion here, but to me that is what being a good Hindu was always about. That is what I was taught at home, and I think that is what we ought to teach our the next generation as well.
Actually, the thing is devotion is a very good thing, and in fact, I don't want to continue.
Like Kanike is never been a monetary. Actually, Kanika means you give something, you give up something of yours. Like it can be your Isha, it can be. So when you go to temple, it's they have put a hundi because there never was a hundi. If you think of if you go to any old temples, it's now they have kept a hundi. That metal wasn't even there before. Like everything was more out of stones and other things. So when they talk about Kanike, when you go to the temple, is more of because all the temples were under Raja Ashraya. That means kings was taken care. As a regular praja didn't have to do anything. Just go there and surrender your ego, surrender your that was the Kanika that you had to live there. So
and there is I think that's a beautiful insight in Savita Garu. Actually, the interesting thing is it's like offer yourself. In fact, there's a slokam in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says the right offering to me is patram pushpam phalam toyam, which is offer your body and mind as divine offering, flower, love and compassion, and patram pushpam phalam, fruits of your action, the results of your action, and then toyam, tears of gratitude. These are the things that are the best offerings to me. So anyway, I think it's a much bigger thing. I think the Bhakti movement is a very special thing. In fact, Madhusudan Saraswati says, Bhaktyapi, Advaitapi. So the one that is rooted in Advaita, which is that oneness, and then expression of the Bhakti is a lot more superior than just the Advaita thing. So, but I think, we all have a responsibility to understand our roots, particularly the Sanatana Dharma and the Advaita philosophy. I mean, it is one of the most profound thought, I think, came in. And then Bhakti is a good way to express it, to have the right finite expression, so that sense of exuberation. But I think what happened is that stood out. We got lost in that expression of the duality. And then that took over, and then the original sense is kind of lost. But I think we are all now getting interested in Sanatana Dharma. I think we all going to be part of establishing the right interpretation. So with that, let's all close our eyes and let's say Om 3 times, and let's conclude the session. Take a deep breath. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. Sarve santu niramayaha. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We wish everybody to be happy. We wish everybody to see only auspicious things. We wish everybody to be free of sorrow and disease, and let there be peace everywhere. With these wonderful thoughts, rub your palms. Generate the love and fire of knowledge. Cup your eyes. Transmit this divine vision and knowledge to our eyes. Divyam dadati me chakshuhu. And slowly and gently open your eyes with a bright smile. And thank you all for sharing and collaborating in sharing the joy of this Yoga Sutra knowledge. And we'll see you again in the next session. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. And for some of us, if you're interested, we are doing a karaoke starting at 9 on the same Zoom link. Please feel free to join.
Okay, I'll join briefly. I have to practice my music. I haven't done it today, but I'll join for an hour.
Okay, good. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.